The consort's quarters were larger than any apartment Daniel had ever lived in. The walls were made of some kind of living material that glowed softly in the darkness. The furniture was designed for Veltharian bodies, but servants had brought in pieces modified for human use. Daniel spent his first night mapping the room in darkness, memorizing every exit and entrance, every potential weapon, every hiding spot. Old habits never truly died. By morning, he had a complete picture of his immediate environment. The main door was guarded at all times by 2 soldiers. There was a service entrance used by the cleaning staff, locked but not alarmed. The windows opened onto a balcony 300 feet above the ground. But the walls of the palace were rough enough to climb if necessary. He filed this information away and went to breakfast. The first month in the palace was a test of patience. Daniel was given tutors to teach him Veltharian customs, history, and etiquette. He learned which foods were appropriate for which occasions. He learned the complex system of bows and gestures that indicated respect, submission, or familiarity. He also learned to watch. The palace was a nest of politics and secrets. Noble houses competed for the queen's favor. Military commanders argued over strategies and resources. Servants whispered gossip in the corridors, unaware that the quiet human walking past them understood every word. Daniel noticed Commander Krath almost immediately. Krath was a large Veltharian, his exoskeleton scarred from decades of warfare. He served as the Queen's chief military advisor, and he was always near her side during official functions. But Daniel saw the way Krath looked at Xerath when she was not watching. It was not respect. It was not loyalty. It was hunger. Daniel began to track Krath's movements through the palace. He noted which nobles Krath met with in private. He listened to fragments of conversations that stopped whenever he approached. He built a picture, piece by piece, of something dangerous taking shape in the shadows, but he did not act. Not yet. He needed more information, more certainty, more time. Queen Xerath summoned him to her private chambers for the first time on his 32nd day in the palace. The room was simpler than Daniel had expected. The furniture was functional rather than ornate. The walls displayed star maps and tactical displays rather than artwork. This was not a room for show. This was where the queen actually worked. Xerath was standing by a window, looking out at the city below. When Daniel entered, she did not turn. "Do you know why I demanded a human consort?" she asked. "To show your dominance over my people," Daniel replied. "That is what my advisors believe." The queen turned to face him. "They are wrong." She moved to a table and poured 2 glasses of dark liquid. She offered one to Daniel, who took it carefully. "My mother took a consort from the Vrelian system," Xerath continued. "The Vrelians are strong and fierce. She thought it would cement our alliance with their people. Instead, it bred resentment. The Vrelians saw their prince reduced to a breeding animal, and they never forgave us." "So you chose a human because we are weak," Daniel said. "No one would expect us to resent anything." "I chose a human because your species interests me." Xerath sat down and gestured for Daniel to do the same. "You have no natural weapons. No claws, no venom, no armor. Your senses are poor. Your lifespans are short. And yet you have spread across the galaxy faster than any species in recorded history. We are persistent," Daniel said. "You are more than that. I have studied your history, Daniel Cooper. I know what your kind did to the apex predators of your homeworld. I know how you conquered every environment on Earth, from frozen wastelands to burning deserts. You are not weak. You are patient. And that makes you far more dangerous than any Vrelian prince." Daniel took a sip of his drink. It was bitter like strong coffee mixed with something floral. "Not unpleasant. If I am so dangerous," he said, "why bring me into your home?" "Because I am surrounded by enemies. the Queen replied simply. My nobles plot against me. My military commanders question my orders. Even my own guards cannot be fully trusted. But you have no faction, no alliance, no reason to betray me to anyone. I could be planning to kill you myself. You could be. Xerath's mandibles clicked in amusement. But you have had 32 days to try, and you have not. That tells me something. What does it tell you? That you are waiting for something. I do not know what, but I am curious to find out. Daniel met her compound eyes and saw something unexpected there. Intelligence, yes, and calculation. But also weariness, loneliness, the weight of a crown that she had never asked to wear. Your Majesty, he said carefully, may I speak freely? You may. You are right that I am waiting, but not for a chance to harm you. I am waiting to understand. Understand what? What kind of ruler you are. What kind of empire this is. Whether there is any path forward that does not end in blood. Xerath was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. You think like a soldier, she said, not like a maintenance worker. It was not a question. Daniel felt a flash of concern. Had he revealed too much? I have not always been a maintenance worker, he admitted. No, I imagine you have not. The Queen rose and walked to the window again. I will not ask about your past, Daniel Cooper. We all have histories we would prefer to leave behind. But I will ask you this. If you discover something in this palace that threatens me, will you tell me? Daniel considered the question carefully. He thought about Commander Krath and his whispered meetings. He thought about the conspiracy that was slowly taking shape. Yes, he said. I will. Then perhaps we can help each other after all. Over the following weeks, Daniel's role in the palace began to shift. He was no longer just a trophy to be displayed at court functions. The Queen began asking for his presence at meetings, seeking his opinion on matters of state. The nobles were confused and offended, but Xerath ignored their complaints. Daniel proved his value quickly. His outsider perspective allowed him to see patterns that the Veltharians missed. He identified inefficiencies in the supply chains. He suggested diplomatic approaches that had not been considered. He asked questions that no one else dared to ask. And through it all, he continued to watch. The conspiracy was growing. Daniel counted at least 8 noble houses involved now, with Commander Krath at the center. They were careful, never speaking openly, but Daniel had spent his career reading the silences between words. They were planning something big. Something soon. Daniel knew he should report to Xerath immediately. But he held back, still gathering evidence, still building his case. He wanted to present her with a complete picture, not fragments and suspicions. It was a mistake he would come to regret. On the night of the Harvest Moon Festival, Daniel was woken by the sound of breaking glass. He rolled out of bed instantly, his body moving on instinct before his mind caught up. 4 figures stood in the doorway of his chamber. Their exoskeletons gleamed in the dim light. They carried blades designed for silent killing. The human first, one of them said. Then the Queen. Daniel rose to his feet slowly, keeping his hands visible. The assassins spread out, surrounding him. They expected him to beg, to plead for his life, to die quietly and quickly. They had no idea what they were dealing with. The sky above Meridian 7 burned orange as the Veltharian warships descended through the clouds. Daniel Cooper stood outside the water treatment plant where he worked and watched them come. Around him, the other colonists ran for shelter, their screams filling the air. But Daniel just stood there, his hands in his pockets, counting the ships. 12 heavy cruisers, 4 carrier vessels. Enough firepower to turn the entire colony into glass. The Veltharian Empire had finally come to claim another world. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted less than 3 hours. The colony's defense grid managed to destroy 2 of the smaller ships before it was overwhelmed. After that, it was just a matter of waiting for the surrender. Daniel sat in his small apartment and listened to the emergency broadcasts. The colonial governor was negotiating terms. The Voltharians wanted resources, territory, and something else. Something that made Daniel pause. They wanted a human male. A consort for their queen. It was meant to be a symbol of human submission. A trophy husband for the ruler of 12 star systems. The colonists would be allowed to live, to work, to exist under Voltharian rule. But one man would be taken to serve at the pleasure of Queen Zirith herself. The lottery was held 3 days later. Daniel watched the broadcast with the same calm expression he had worn when the ships arrived. Names flashed across the screen, thousands of eligible males being narrowed down by random selection. When his own name appeared in the final round, he felt something he had not felt in years. Purpose. The Voltharian soldiers came for him the next morning. They were tall creatures, their bodies covered in hard shells that gleamed like polished metal. Their eyes were compound, like insects from Earth, and their mouths were filled with sharp mandibles. They looked at Daniel the way a human might look at a small dog. "You are Daniel Cooper," one of them said. It was not a question. "I am," Daniel replied. "You will come with us. The Queen awaits." Daniel picked up the small bag he had packed. He had no family on Meridian 7, no close friends. He had kept to himself for 5 years, fixing pipes and filters, living a quiet life. The perfect cover for a man who wanted to disappear. The colonists gathered to watch him leave. Some of them cried. A few cursed the Voltharians. One old woman pressed a small cross into his hand and told him to be brave. Daniel thanked her and walked toward the transport ship. Inside, the Voltharians stripped him of his clothes and gave him new ones. Soft fabrics in deep purple, the color of their royal house. They scanned his body for weapons and diseases. They found nothing unusual. Just a healthy human male in his mid-30s, slightly taller than average, with brown hair and gray eyes. What they could not see was what lay beneath the surface. Daniel Cooper had not always been a maintenance worker. 10 years ago, he had been Captain Daniel Cooper of Earth's Special Operations Division. He had infiltrated hostile bases on 6 different worlds. He had eliminated targets that governments could not officially acknowledge. He had learned to speak 9 alien languages and studied the weaknesses of a dozen different species. The Voltharians were one of them. He knew that their compound eyes gave them excellent peripheral vision but poor depth perception. He knew that their exoskeletons were strong but had weak points at the joints. He knew that their society was built on strict hierarchy and that their queen held absolute power. He also knew that they saw humans as weak, soft, and harmless. It was a mistake that many species had made. Usually, they learned better. Sometimes, they did not live long enough to learn at all. The journey to the Voltharian homeworld took 2 weeks. Daniel spent the time observing, learning, and adapting. He ate the food they gave him without complaint. He answered their questions with polite honesty. He let them believe he was exactly what he appeared to be, a frightened human, trying to make the best of a terrible situation. The guards grew comfortable around him. They stopped watching him so closely. They spoke freely in their own language, not realizing that Daniel understood every word. He learned that Queen Zirith had taken the throne young, after her mother died in a suspicious accident. He learned that several powerful nobles opposed her rule. He learned that the empire was fighting wars on 3 different fronts, stretching its military thin. Most importantly, he learned that they had no idea what humans were really capable of. When the ship finally arrived at the Voltharian homeworld, Daniel was taken to a holding facility to be prepared for his presentation to the Queen. They bathed him, dressed him in finer clothes, and taught him the proper way to bow. "You will not speak unless spoken to," the handler told him. "You will keep your eyes lowered. You will show proper respect for Her Majesty at all times." "I understand," Daniel said. "If you displease the Queen, you will be executed." "I understand that too." The handler studied him with obvious confusion. Most humans in this situation would be trembling with fear. Daniel simply stood there, calm and patient, like a man waiting for a bus. "You are strange for a human," the handler said. Daniel allowed himself a small smile. "I have been told that before." The throne room was vast, filled with crystalline pillars that caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. Hundreds of Veltharian nobles lined the walls, their wings folded, their eyes fixed on the small human being led through their midst. At the far end of the room, seated on a throne of living crystal, was Queen Zirith. She was beautiful in a terrifying way. 7 feet tall, with wings that shimmered like oil on water and eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone. Her exoskeleton was adorned with precious metals and gems. When she spoke, her voice vibrated through the air like music. "So this is the human," she said. "The tribute from Meridian 7. Daniel bowed as he had been taught. "Your Majesty." The Queen rose from her throne and descended the steps toward him. The nobles fell silent. Even the guards seemed to hold their breath. Zirith circled him slowly, studying him from every angle. Daniel kept his eyes lowered, but he tracked her movements through sound alone. He noted the way she moved, the slight hesitation in her left leg, the faint scars on her wings. She had been in battles. Real ones. She was not just a figurehead. "You do not tremble," the Queen observed. Daniel looked up, meeting her compound eyes directly. It was a breach of protocol, and the nobles gasped. But the Queen did not seem angry. She seemed intrigued. "Should I, Your Majesty?" Daniel asked. For a long moment, Zirith said nothing. Then her mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Perhaps not," she said. "Perhaps you are too foolish to know fear." "Or perhaps," Daniel replied quietly, "I have simply learned that fear serves no purpose." The Queen studied him for another moment. Then she turned to address her court. "The human will be installed in the consort's quarters," she announced. "He will serve at my pleasure until I decide otherwise." As the guards led him away, Daniel allowed himself one more small smile. The Veltharians thought they had brought home a pet, a symbol of human weakness and submission. They had no idea that they had just opened their gates to a wolf. The first assassin moved fast. Veltharians were quick, their insectoid limbs capable of bursts of speed that could outpace most species. His blade cut through the air where Daniel's throat had been a fraction of a second before. But Daniel was no longer there. Humans were not fast. Everyone knew this. Humans were slow, soft creatures who relied on tools and numbers to survive. The Veltharians had conquered 100 species, and they knew exactly how dangerous each one could be. They had never fought a human before. Daniel ducked under the first strike and drove his elbow into the joint where the assassin's arm met his torso. The exoskeleton cracked. The Veltharian screamed as his arm went limp, the blade clattering to the floor. The second assassin was already attacking, but Daniel had grabbed the fallen blade. He spun, using the first assassin as a shield, and drove the weapon through the gap in the second attacker's neck armor. Dark blood sprayed across the glowing walls. 2 down. 3 seconds had passed. The remaining 2 assassins hesitated. This was not how it was supposed to go. The human was supposed to be helpless. He was supposed to die quickly. Daniel did not give them time to recover. He threw the blade at the third assassin's face. It was not a killing throw, but it forced her to dodge, and in that moment of distraction, Daniel closed the distance. His hands found the weak points in her armor, her mandibles, her wing joints, places where pain was sharpest. She went down screaming. Her exoskeleton cracked in 3 places. The 4th assassin ran. Daniel let him go. He had bigger concerns. He picked up one of the fallen blades and moved toward the Queen's chambers. The palace was in chaos now, alarms blaring, guards running through the corridors. But Daniel had memorized every route. He knew which paths the guards would take and which would be left unprotected. He reached Xerath's door just as another group of assassins arrived. There were 6 of them this time, larger and more heavily armed than the first group. They saw Daniel standing in their path, covered in blood, holding a single blade. "Step aside, human," the leader said. "We have no quarrel with you." "Yes," Daniel replied. "You do." He moved. Later, the palace guards would find the bodies and wonder what had happened. They would count the wounds and try to reconstruct the fight. They would struggle to believe that a single human, unarmed except for a stolen blade, could have done such damage. The fight lasted 11 seconds. When it was over, 2 of the assassins were dead. 1 was dying, and 3 more were injured too badly to continue. Daniel had taken a cut across his left arm and a bruise to his ribs where a blow had connected. He kicked open the door to the Queen's chambers. Xerath was standing in the center of the room, her own blade drawn. Her personal guards lay dead at her feet, killed by an assassin who was now pinned to the wall with the Queen's dagger through his chest. She looked at Daniel, at the blood on his hands, at the calm expression on his face. "What are you?" she demanded. "Right now," Daniel said, "I am the only one in this palace you can trust." The rest of the night was a blur of violence and confusion. More assassins appeared and were dealt with. Commander Krath was found trying to flee the palace and was captured by guards loyal to the Queen. By dawn, the conspiracy had been exposed, and its leaders were in chains. Daniel stood in the throne room as the prisoners were brought before Xerath. His arm had been bandaged by a palace healer, who had stared at him with a mixture of fear and fascination. The guards kept their distance, uncertain what to make of the human who had killed 6 trained Veltharian warriors with nothing but a stolen knife. Krath glared at Daniel with pure hatred. "Impossible," the commander spat. "Humans are prey animals, weak, slow. You could not have defeated my warriors." "And yet," Daniel replied quietly, "here we are." Queen Xerath rose from her throne. Her compound eyes swept across the assembled prisoners, the nobles who had plotted her death, the commander who had betrayed her trust. "You thought you knew what humans were," she said. "You looked at them and saw soft flesh and dull senses. You saw a species that hid behind its tools and its numbers, and you concluded that they were nothing to fear." She descended the steps slowly, each footfall echoing in the silent hall. "You were wrong." The Queen stopped in front of Krath. "Humans did not become the dominant species of their world through strength or speed. They became dominant because they do not stop. They adapt. They learn. They endure. And when they are threatened, they fight with a ferocity that would shame any Veltharian warrior." She turned to address the court. "I took a human consort to show our power over their species. Instead, I have learned a valuable lesson. Humanity is not our prey. They are not our servants. They are something else entirely." Xerath looked at Daniel, and I would very much like to understand what that something is. The prisoners were taken away to await their fate. The court was dismissed, but Daniel was asked to remain. When they were alone, Xerath dropped onto her throne with an exhaustion she had not allowed herself to show in public. "You knew," she said, "about the conspiracy. You knew, and you did not tell me." "I suspected," Daniel admitted. "I was gathering proof. I wanted to give you something solid, not just rumors and fragments. You waited too long." "I did. I am sorry." The Queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was tired. "You could have let them kill me. You could have escaped in the chaos and returned to your people a hero. I could have. Why did you not?" Daniel considered the question carefully. He had asked himself the same thing, standing in the corridor with blood on his hands and assassins at his feet. "Because you are not what I expected," he finally said. "When I was first brought here, I thought I knew exactly who you were. A tyrant, a conqueror, a monster who crushed worlds beneath her heel. And now? Now I see a queen who is trying to hold together an empire that wants to tear itself apart. I see a ruler surrounded by enemies who cannot trust anyone, not even her own guards. I see someone who is very alone and very tired." He met her eyes directly. "I have spent my life fighting, killing. I was good at it. But I came to Meridian 7 because I wanted to stop. I wanted to find another way." "And you think you can find that here? In the heart of the empire that conquered your people?" "I think," Daniel said slowly, "that I would like to try." Zirith studied him for a long moment. Then her mandibles clicked in that soft gesture he had come to recognize as amusement. "You are a very strange human, Daniel Cooper. So I have been told, Your Majesty." "Zirith," she said. "When we are alone, you may call me Zirith." It was a small thing, a simple gesture, but Daniel understood its significance. In that moment, something shifted between them. Not trust, not yet, but the beginning of something that might become trust, given time. "Zirith," he repeated. "I should probably tell you about my background. Before Meridian 7, before I became a maintenance worker, I assumed you would tell me when you were ready. I am ready now." So Daniel told her about the Special Operations Division, about the missions and the kills, about the years he spent learning to become a weapon in human form, about the day he decided he could not do it anymore and walked away from everything. When he finished, Zirith was silent. "You could have killed me at any time," she said, double quotes, "yes. Why did you not?" "Because killing you would have started a war. Millions would have died. I came here to find a better way, remember?" The Queen smiled. It was a strange expression on her alien face, but Daniel found himself smiling back. "A better way," she repeated. "I wonder what that might look like." "I have some ideas," Daniel said. "If you are interested in hearing them." "I believe I am." The weeks following the failed coup were difficult. Commander Krath and his co-conspirators were put on trial. Some were executed. Others were stripped of their titles and exiled to distant colonies. The noble houses that had supported the conspiracy lost much of their power and influence. But the real work happened behind closed doors. Daniel sat in Zirith's private study. A star map projected between them. Red markers indicated Valtharian territory. Blue showed the 3 fronts where the Empire was currently fighting. Yellow highlighted the human colonies, scattered across a dozen systems. "Your empire is stretched too thin," Daniel said. "You are fighting wars you cannot win while your nobles plot against you at home." "I am aware of the problems," Zirith replied with a hint of irritation. "What I need are solutions, and the wars. That is not as simple as you make it sound." "I did not say it was simple, but your military is exhausted. Your resources are depleted. Every year you continue these conflicts. Your enemies at home grow stronger." Zirith's wings rustled, a sign of agitation that Daniel had learned to recognize. "If I end the wars, my nobles will call me weak. They will say I have lost my mother's fire. Let them say it. Words do not matter as much as results." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Then she asked the question Daniel had been waiting for. "And what of your people? The human colonies under our control? That is the other problem we need to discuss." Daniel rose and walked to the map. He pointed to the yellow markers scattered across Valtharian space. "There are approximately 4 million humans living in your territory. Most of them are treated as second-class citizens at best, slaves at worst. They are resentful, angry, and growing more dangerous every year. They are conquered people. Resentment is expected, but it does not have to be permanent. Daniel turned to face her. What if the humans in your empire were not subjects to be controlled, but allies to be cultivated? Xerath's mandibles clicked skeptically. You suggest I give them equal rights. The nobles would never accept it. I am not suggesting you give them anything. I am suggesting you let them earn it. Over the next hour, Daniel outlined his proposal. It was ambitious, perhaps even impossible, but Xerath listened without interruption. The plan was simple in concept, but complex in execution. Humans would be allowed to serve in the military, not as slaves or cannon fodder, but as genuine soldiers with paths to advancement. They would be allowed to own businesses, to hold minor official positions, to integrate into Veltharian society in meaningful ways. In return, they would provide something the Empire desperately needed: new perspectives, new ideas, new ways of solving old problems. Humans are adaptable, Daniel explained. We thrive in environments that would break other species. We see solutions where others see only obstacles. If you give my people a stake in the success of your empire, you will be amazed at what we can accomplish. And if they use this opportunity to rebel, then you will be no worse off than you are now. But I do not think they will rebel. Most people, human or Veltharian, just want to live in peace. Give them that chance, and they will take it. Xerath studied the map in silence. Daniel could see the calculations running behind her compound eyes. The risks, the rewards, the political costs and benefits. This will not be easy, she finally said. Nothing worth doing ever is. And you believe it will work? I believe it is worth trying. The Queen rose from her seat and moved to stand beside him at the map. Their shoulders almost touched. You asked me once why I chose a human consort, she said quietly. I told you that your species interested me. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. What was the whole truth? I was lonely. Xerath's voice was softer than Daniel had ever heard it. I have ruled this empire since I was barely an adult. I have been surrounded by advisors and servants and guards, but I have never had anyone I could truly talk to. Anyone who saw me as something other than a queen to be served or a threat to be eliminated. She turned to look at him directly. When you stood before my throne and refused to tremble, I felt something I had not felt in years. Curiosity, and something else I could not name. Daniel understood. He had felt it too, though he had not allowed himself to acknowledge it until now. In my experience, he said carefully, loneliness is not something that goes away on its own. It requires effort, connection, trust. Do you trust me, Daniel? I'm learning to, and I'm learning to trust you. Xerath reached out and touched his hand. Her exoskeleton was cool and smooth against his skin. Whatever happens next, I want you to know that I am grateful. For your honesty, for your counsel, for your willingness to see me as something more than a conqueror. Daniel turned his hand to clasp hers. It was an awkward fit, human fingers against Veltharian digits, but it worked. We are both more than what we appear, he said. That is why this might actually work. The reforms began slowly. Xerath announced a new program allowing humans to enlist in the Imperial military. The response was skeptical at first. Humans had been treated as inferiors for so long that many could not believe the offer was genuine. But some took the chance. The first human soldiers entered training 6 months after the coup. They struggled at first, unused to Veltharian methods and equipment. But they adapted quickly, faster than anyone expected. They developed new tactics that took advantage of human strengths. They formed bonds with their Veltharian comrades that cut across species lines. Word spread through the human colonies. More volunteers came forward, not just for the military, but for science programs, engineering projects, diplomatic positions. Humans began to appear in roles they had never held before. Not everyone was happy about this. Some Veltharian nobles complained loudly about the corruption of their ancient traditions. Some humans distrusted the reforms, seeing them as a trap. There were protests, arguments, and occasional violence. But slowly, things began to change. Daniel worked closely with Xerath throughout this period. They spent long hours together, planning and strategizing, dealing with crises and celebrating small victories. Their relationship evolved from political alliance to genuine partnership, and somewhere along the way, it became something more. Daniel did not know exactly when he fell in love with the Veltharian queen. It was not a single moment, but a gradual accumulation. The way she listened to him with genuine interest. The way she challenged his assumptions and forced him to think more clearly. The way she laughed. A strange clicking sound that he found oddly endearing. The way she looked at him when she thought he was not watching. One night, as they sat together reviewing reports, Xerath suddenly put down her tablet and turned to face him. "There's something I must tell you," she said. "Something I should have said long ago." Daniel felt his heart rate increase. "What is it?" "The lottery that chose you as my consort. It was not random." Daniel went still. "What do you mean?" "I had my agents research the human males on Meridian 7. I was looking for someone intelligent, adaptable, and capable of surviving in my court. When your name came up, your background was flagged as suspicious. Your records were too clean, your history too vague. You knew what I was. I suspected. I did not know for certain until the night of the coup." Daniel absorbed this information slowly. He should have felt angry, manipulated. Instead, he felt a strange sense of relief. "So you chose me deliberately. You wanted someone dangerous. I wanted someone who could protect me when my own people could not be trusted." Xerath's voice was quiet. "I did not expect to find a partner, a friend, someone who makes me feel less alone in this universe." She reached out and touched his face. Her digits were cool against his cheek. "I did not expect to fall in love with a human." Daniel covered her hand with his own. "Neither did I," he said. "Fall in love with a Veltharian, I mean." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Xerath made that clicking sound that served as her laughter. "We make a strange pair, Daniel Cooper. The strangest. But strange is not always bad." "No," the Queen agreed. "It is not." She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. It was a Veltharian gesture of intimacy, and Daniel found himself moved by it. "Whatever comes next," Xerath said, "I want you beside me. I am not going anywhere." Outside the window, the twin suns of the Veltharian homeworld began to rise. A new day was beginning, and with it, a new chapter in the history of two species. Daniel held the Queen close and allowed himself to hope. 5 years had passed since Daniel Cooper was taken from Meridian 7 as a tribute. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The Veltharian Empire had ended its 3 wars. The first 2 had been resolved through negotiation, with treaties that gave up territory but preserved resources and lives. The third had required more creative solutions, including the deployment of a new unit, composed entirely of human volunteers. The human soldiers had performed beyond anyone's expectations. They had adapted to environments that crippled Veltharian troops. They had developed strategies that confused and outmaneuvered their enemies. They had earned respect through blood and sacrifice. More importantly, they had changed how the galaxy saw humanity. Daniel stood on the balcony of the palace, watching the city below. The capital had changed too. Human businesses lined the streets alongside Veltharian ones. Mixed groups walked together without suspicion or hostility. Children of both species played in the parks, learning each other's languages and customs. It was not perfect. Prejudice still existed on both sides. Old wounds healed slowly. But progress was being made, Day by day, year by year, Xerath joined him on the balcony. She moved differently now, with less tension in her wings, less weight on her shoulders. The crown still sat heavy, but she no longer bore it alone. "The ceremony begins in 1 hour," she said. "Are you ready?" Daniel turned to face her. He was wearing the formal robes of a Valtharian royal consort, modified to fit his human frame. Around his neck hung a medal that combined human and Valtharian symbols, as ready as I will ever be. Today was the day of the formal alliance ceremony. After years of negotiation, humanity and the Valtharian Empire were officially becoming partners. Equal partners with shared responsibilities and shared benefits. It was a treaty unlike anything that had existed before, and Daniel, once a nameless tribute, would be signing it on behalf of humanity as king consort of the Valtharian Empire. "Your people on Earth are still not happy about this," Xerath observed. "Some of them are not. They think I have betrayed humanity by aligning us with our former conquerors. Have you?" Daniel smiled. "I prefer to think I have saved humanity from a war we could not win and given us a future we could not have achieved alone." The human colonies had flourished under the new arrangement. Trade had opened between Valtharian and human worlds. Technology was shared freely. Human scientists worked in Valtharian laboratories, and Valtharian engineers helped build human cities. Most importantly, humanity was no longer seen as a conquered species. They had earned their place at the table, not through war or violence, but through persistence, adaptability, and sheer stubborn determination. "The nobles are still not entirely convinced," Xerath said. "Some of them think I've gone soft. Let them think what they want. The results speak for themselves." It was true. The Empire was stronger now than it had been in generations. The economy was growing. The military was rebuilding. The internal conflicts that had nearly torn the Empire apart were fading as new opportunities arose. And at the center of it all stood the unlikely couple, an alien queen and her human consort. The ceremony hall was packed with dignitaries from across the galaxy. Human ambassadors sat beside Valtharian nobles. Military commanders from both species stood at attention along the walls. Journalists broadcast the event to billions of viewers. Across dozens of worlds, Daniel walked down the central aisle toward the raised platform where Xerath waited. He kept his pace steady, his expression calm. He had faced assassins and armies, but somehow this felt more daunting. He was about to change history. When he reached the platform, Xerath took his hand in hers. They turned to face the assembled crowd together. "5 years ago," Xerath said, her voice carrying through the hall, "I took a human consort as a symbol of my empire's power. I expected him to be a trophy, a pet, a reminder of human weakness and Valtharian strength." She paused, letting the words sink in. "I was wrong." The crowd murmured. This was not the speech anyone had expected. Humanity is not what we believe them to be. They are not weak. They are not fragile. They are not prey. They are survivors, adapters, fighters who never give up, no matter the odds. Xerath turned to look at Daniel. "This man stood between me and death when my own people would have killed me. He showed me that strength comes in many forms, that an enemy can become an ally. That trust, once earned, is the most precious resource in the universe." She raised their joined hands. "Today, I do not stand before you as a conqueror with a trophy. I stand before you as a queen with a partner, an equal, a king." The murmurs grew louder. Daniel stepped forward to speak. "I was born on Earth," he said, "a small blue world that most of you have never heard of. I was trained to fight, to kill, to survive at any cost. I spent years believing that conflict was the only language the galaxy understood." He looked out at the assembled crowd, human and Valtharian alike. "I was wrong too." He pulled a document from his robes. The Treaty of Alliance, written in both human and Velthurian script. This document represents something new. Not conquest. Not submission. Partnership. Two species, working together, building a future that neither could achieve alone. He turned to Xerath. She pulled out her own copy of the treaty. Together, they signed their names at the bottom of each document. "Let this be the beginning," Daniel said. "Not the end of the story, but the first chapter of something greater." The applause began slowly and built to a thunderous roar. Human and Velthurian voices mingled together in celebration. Daniel looked at his wife, his queen, his partner. She smiled at him with her alien face, and he found himself smiling back. Later that night, after the celebrations had finally ended, Daniel and Xerath stood together on the balcony of their private chambers. The twin suns had set, and the stars were visible above the city. "Do you ever think about what might have happened?" Xerath asked. "If things had gone differently?" "Sometimes. If I had been a different man, I might have killed you that first week and started a war that would have destroyed both our peoples. And if I had been a different queen, I might have grown bored with my human toy and had you executed. We were both lucky. Then, lucky." Xerath's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I prefer to think we were meant to find each other. That the universe, for all its chaos, sometimes gets things right." Daniel put his arm around her. It was still an awkward fit, his human body against her Volthorian frame, but they had learned to make it work. "My people have a saying," he told her. "We are the masters of our fate. We are the captains of our souls." What does that mean? It means that luck and fate are just words. What matters is the choices we make. Every day, every moment, we decide who we want to be. Xerath considered this. "And who do you want to be, Daniel Cooper?" He thought about everything that had happened. The colony he had left behind. The violence of the coup. The long, slow work of building something new from the ashes of conquest. "I want to be someone who made a difference," he finally said. "Someone who took a terrible situation and found a way to make it better. Someone who proved that even enemies can become friends, given enough time and patience. And love?" "And love," Daniel agreed. "That helps too." Far below, in the streets of the capital, humans and Veltharians walked together under the stars. It was not a perfect world. There were still problems to solve, conflicts to resolve, wounds to heal. But it was a better world than it had been. And it all started because a queen chose a consort, who was not exactly what he appeared. Xerath leaned her head against Daniel's shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For being patient. For seeing past what I was to what I could become. For believing that a better future was possible." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for the same. We saved each other, I think." "We did. And now we get to save everything else." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new problems, new opportunities. But tonight, they could simply be two people who had found each other against impossible odds. Two people who had proven that even in a galaxy full of conflict and conquest, hope was never entirely lost. The Queen's human groom had not been what he appeared. He had been something far more dangerous than anyone expected. He had been exactly what the galaxy needed.